Already know. I can tell you, we know what it felt like when our broken hearts occurred, and it was not good. Today, before we get started, I want to let you know we are Facebook Live. It is my favorite part of the show. If you have a question or need some assistance, please just drop it in the Facebook Live question. Sandi and I always go back after the show. We answer all the questions. We are absolutely excited to answer any of the questions live on the air. You can do that as well. It's all confidential. We will not say your name. I want to just get out real quick that we are coming up on the 1 year anniversary of the Las Vegas shootings. And I met with an amazing lady yesterday, and we had a great, Sandy was amazing. We had a great 1 hour visit. She cried, we hugged, but I told her today that I was going to dedicate the show to her. And for
Oh,
legal reasons, I'm not allowed to say her name.
okay.
But the minute we met each other, it was like we were instant friends.
Mm.
And she didn't realize that that experience was a grieving experience.
Wow. That's
And
amazing to me.
she's been in some therapy, which has been really good. And we just started talking about how that experience could have translated into her heart. And so I just want to give a big shout out to my new friend. She knows who she is, and just let her know I'm thinking about her. Today's topic of our show is hashtag Me Too.
I love it. I'm so glad we're talking about this today.
We need to be talking about, especially with what's going on in all the news, all
Yes.
the craziness.
Yes.
Sandy, introduce yourself to our friends. Just remind them who you are and how you got into doing grief recovery.
Absolutely. So, my name is Sandi Atmore, and like Sharon, I'm an advanced certified grief recovery specialist. And what led me to grief recovery was growing up in an abusive home, growing up with physical, verbal, and sexual abuse. And I experienced a great deal of sexual abuse. And, a lot of times when people hear my story, they think, oh, it must have been so traumatic. And they use the word trauma. I really like to use the word loss
Mm-hmm.
because what I needed as a child was safety and stability and emotional connection. I needed to be affirmed. I needed to know who I was. And I lost all those things. I lost safety and control. I didn't have personal space or boundaries. All of that was lost. And grieving it actually helped me to really heal and to live a very different life. So that's what brought me to grief recovery. It was all those challenges growing up. There were a lot of other things too, but I feel like that foundation in my home and even losing myself is what brought me to grief recovery. And going through the grief recovery method was very restoring for me. It gave me a lot of verbiage for things I didn't have verbiage for. And so it's something I'm very, very passionate about. So the fact that we're talking about this topic is it just makes my heart sing. I'm so happy.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? Sometimes I feel like we're repeating the same subject, and it might bore our friends. But the bottom line is, we haven't gotten to everybody, and
No.
everyone doesn't know that a sexual harassment or a sexual assault or a child abuse sexual experience is a grieving experience. It causes a loss in our heart. I have a child abuse, sexual child abuse incident in my life
Mm.
when I was around 12 years old. And sometimes when I'm telling the story, repeating the story in my grief class, just sharing a little bit about it,
Yeah.
people will absolutely gasp. They go, you know, as I share that story. And I remember thinking that back then I was 12 years old, and when it happened to me, I literally thought that was normal. I thought
Yes.
that was life. I thought this happens to everybody. This is what you're supposed to do. And honestly, I didn't report it. I didn't report it then. I didn't report it until years later when the memory came back to me. And
Mm.
I called my mom, she was the one I reported it to, and told her what had happened. And I just thought it was part of it. I remember I was able to get away from the situation, but I just thought it was normal that this is what happened.
Wow.
And I would imagine that that's what happens a lot to little girls and little boys.
Oh, 100%. I feel like not only have I walked through this, but I've walked with many people through these types of experiences, whether they're children or adults. And I think one of the things that's really challenging as children is number one, a lot of times, especially for young children, we don't have language for what's happening.
Right.
So there's language that we don't have, number one. Number two, a lot of times when we think about sexual abuse, especially with children, we think about this, man who's hiding in the corner, who's wearing a trench coat, who, this whole stranger danger thing.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is that the majority of child sexual abuse happens either by a family member or a trusted family friend. Not in every single case, but majority cases, that is who it is. So the child is often what we would call groomed. In other words, the child is kind of seduced into maybe a game, or it's made to be like it's attention or something special. And so because children operate differently than adults, a child may have some sense of shame, but also have a sense of connection,
Right.
a sense of I'm getting attention, a sense of this is somebody my parents approve of, or sometimes it's even a parent, which makes it even more confusing. And so therefore for the child, they don't recognize, because as children we also kind of innately know that people that are bigger than us are supposed to know more. So as a child, yeah, that idea of like, well, I guess this is right.
Right. Exactly. Now, some of the past clients that just talking to you have come to my mind, and a couple of them were really young that I worked with grief recovery. But I remember a lady telling me that she thought she had done something wrong. And she actually said the experience was almost as if she thought she was getting a spanking for doing something wrong. And
Yes.
she was absolutely raped at a very young age. And exactly what you said. They don't have the words for it. They don't know how to communicate it. And they just go on. And then many times later, this comes back to them, right?
Oh, yes.
For me, it was definitely somebody we knew. I have family members that have had certain experiences. And again, it was all people that we knew. It's not like it was the stranger on the street.
Yep.
It is not like it was the stranger danger. And it happens equally to boys as much as it does to girls.
It does.
And when are we going to put our foot down and start saying enough is enough? And that's where I think we're at today. We are opening our eyes, we're opening our heart, and we are saying we cannot do this anymore. Hence the hashtag #MeToo movement.
Absolutely.
So I was hearing on the radio this week that a woman said that the hashtag #MeToo movement particularly pertains to a boss, someone over you, a stronger boss, or someone of authority. And that's what it was pointed at. And I never took it that way.
No.
From day one.
No.
I know I've done some research on it, and I know that it absolutely came out in 2015. It spread to bring attention to the sexual assault movement, and that tens of thousands of people posted hashtag #MeToo.
Yes.
And I was one of them. I will also share that I did have a sexual harassment lawsuit in 2000 that I absolutely won. It was from a manager at my place of business. And the thing that was really funny is that it's not funny, but here was the thing that was strange for me. I didn't put sexual harassment on it. I just thought he was bad at telling jokes. And when he pressed up against me, I would push back and I would tell him to stop, and he would tell sexual jokes. And he was a manager, I was a manager. And because we were both managers, what I found out later is that they think they can get away with it because it's not an underling or someone below them, right? So they're not harassing someone below them. So they feel like they can get away with it. And I kept blowing it off like, he's going to stop. Eventually he's going to stop. And actually had my husband come to my workplace and let him see how big my husband was and all that. And it still didn't stop. It actually increased it.
Wow.
And so when I did report it, I was told that it was a lie. I made it up, that it wasn't true. And honestly, my first jump was going to be to move from that job, to just quit and walk away. And actually, it was a friend of mine, and he said, "But what are you teaching your girls if you just accept this and you just, walk
Wow.
away?" And so that's when I decided to go forward with it. And it wasn't very long that, we settled and I moved to a new place and all of that. Hashtag #MeToo is so much more than just workplace sexual harassment, I feel.
I totally agree with you. I feel like many people that were posting hashtag Me Too were people that experienced sexual abuse when they were growing up. And I think kind of to the point that you're talking about with the sexual harassment, case that you had at your place of employment. A lot of times when we've grown up and sexual abuse has happened and we felt like it was normal, then when we are in a workplace situation and there is a sexual assault, sometimes we don't, like you said, recognize that this is sexual assault because it was already normalized when we were younger, and we carry that forward. So I think, whoever was stating that this was just about employers, I think they're off in that for sure, because absolutely you kind of can't separate the two. A lot of times people that end up in sexual assault situations, and there's statistics on this, as adults, were often in sexual abuse situations as children. And so it's across the board, right?
Yeah.
Anything inappropriate across the board, no matter where it is.
So I think because, and I know for a fact, because I've grieved every one of those sexual encounters with myself and the sexual harassment, it makes me freer to share about it.
Absolutely.
Because it's not connected to me.
Yep.
And almost sometimes when I'm having to share it, I can almost giggle a little bit, like I have to add some emotion to it because I feel like it's an out-of-body experience, like you're telling someone else's story once we've grieved it, right?
Yes.
But when I do share that story, there are so many women and men that sit on my couch that I'm working with that share their own story.
Absolutely.
Are you blown away by how many times that it comes up?
I am. And more and more and more. And I feel like what's happened with the Me Too movement, because the Me Too movement is so present, so in the media, so kind of, on social media, and it's in all these places, and it's in magazines and all this stuff. It's also elevated the awareness for a lot of different people. So I feel like more and more clients, not only because they hear my story, but also because of what they're seeing in the media, are going, this is triggering something that happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, this happened to me. I had one woman who called me and she was just sobbing, and she said, I didn't realize how impacted I was by what happened to me until this all came out in the media, and I haven't been able to stop crying since.
One of the things that really sort of upsets me now, but it is because of the Me Too movement that I can really see it. They made me sign a nonverbal disclosure where I wouldn't talk about it. And that place is actually out of business, but they're no longer there. But I literally couldn't talk about it. I couldn't talk about what happened. I couldn't talk about the settlement. And they were going to come, they would, it was actually written up that they could come back and sue me for like 10 times the amount if I disclosed it or said anything.
Wow.
And it was literally with the hashtag Me Too, when I posted that on my Facebook, that I was like, I need to be able to talk about this. We need to be able to share. We need to get the word out. We need to let people know we have had enough. It is over. Stop it. You know what I mean? Like, we have to change our attitude and our approach to dealing with it. One of the other things, Sandi, that I noticed that I didn't realize until I went through grief recovery was that I became a overbearing mother that would not let my children out of my sight.
Of course.
And I never associated it back with that, but it absolutely had to do with that.
Yes.
And then a lot had to do with even just being around family, because I always felt like if you let your guard down, you never know where the kids are going to, when we have a huge family, 100 people in the house at one time, kids running around, I wanted to make sure I was always keeping my eyes on my children. And honestly, it was not until I saw a show on one of the talk shows where a woman was the daughter was complaining about how overbearing the mother was, that I saw myself for that.
Wow.
But my poor kids, they had to live in the aftermath of what this sexual abuse had done to me later on in my life.
Right. So even though they didn't experience it directly, they experienced it in a sense through your fear.
Yes.
Right? So you were passing down your fear.
Yeah.
Which, of course, makes, I think, a lot of sense. I mean, to me, I think, kind of to your point, what you were saying before, one of the major losses, I believe, with sexual abuse is the secrecy of it.
Yes.
The silence of it. Like you're saying, we're not supposed to talk about it. The disbelief. For some reason, we don't want to believe that people would do these type of things. And because we don't want to believe that, we don't want to look at it. And so it just perpetuates more people being able to do these kind of things. And there isn't light on the topic. And I know a lot of times for somebody who's been in a situation, either sexual harassment or childhood sexual abuse, experiencing it and then trying to share it and being met with disbelief.
Right.
Or being met with, well, it must have been your fault in some way.
Yeah.
Is extremely significant. And so kind of also to your other point is when I've experienced that loss when I'm young, like I'm going to react to it, and I'm going to continue to react to it until it's resolved.
Exactly. And we know for a fact, as grief recovery specialists, some of the things that a sexual abuse survivor can actually experience, and what they come to us with is not only the grieving experience and the loss in their heart, but it's sort of underlying there. It's also the loss of trust.
Yes.
The loss of safety, the loss of control of their body, and just the loss of being able to take care of themselves and handle it themselves, however that was going to be. Why didn't I, the better, different, or more, anything they wanted, better, different, or more,
Yeah.
or why didn't I do it a different way? Why didn't I handle it? Why didn't I tell someone? That always comes back, I think, to haunt us, and when we're actually able to talk about it and admit it.
So true. And you know, kind of to piggyback on what you're saying, his name is Dr. Dan Allender, and he wrote a whole book on sexual abuse. But one of the other things that he talks about, and it's a really significant loss, is it's kind of termed like the person a lot of times can experience a betrayal of their own body. In other words, what happens, let's go to child sexual abuse. What happens a lot of times is that even though molestation is wrong and violating, a body will often respond to being touched. And so there's this, oh, my body responded, and there was a good feeling about that, and yet there's shame attached to that at the same time. So it's a really big loss. It's that loss of like, my body betrayed me. You know, I had one person tell me I wasn't molested because I liked it. I said, you were 5 and the person was an adult. That's molestation. Whether you liked it or not doesn't go into the equation because you were a child. But I think even those are really, really significant losses as well.
Absolutely. And just, I can only imagine the awareness that you switched her thinking on that, and that you changed that, because that was the same thing that was going on with me at the workplace, is that I literally thought that I could handle it because I was a strong woman. And I was like, well, I'm a strong woman. I can handle it. I can push him off. And, you know, I'd be at the lunch counter and he'd come up behind me. I mean, really pushing into me, and I'd push back. And, I can handle it. I'm a strong woman. At least, he's nothing to me. It doesn't mean anything, that sort of thing. So even when he repeated something in front of our boss together, really vulgar, she corrected him a little bit but left it alone. And then when we got interviewed, she denied that it even happened. That's the other thing. I think when you do have a witness and they, deny that the situation even happened, I think that's a second layer to the loss right there. It's again the loss of trust. Here, you're my boss. You're supposed to protect me, and this is what happened. So
I think that's very significant. And I find that happens at all levels. It happens at the child level, at the teenage level, the adult level, in multitudes of situations where there isn't support and belief for the person who's been victimized.
For sure. We're going to take a quick break. Before we get there, I just want to throw out some other hashtags that have come out of the Me Too movement. They are hashtag I Will Change. That was set up by men, which was totally amazing. Hashtag Church Too. And hashtag Silence is Not Spiritual. And you had another one, which was...
There is a couple of them. There's hashtag Time's Up, which was attorneys that came together to provide legal representation. And then there's also hashtag Time number 2, Time to Heal.
Awesome.
Which is about healing for the victims.
When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the myths of sexual abuse. See you right back here after the break, friends.
You just had an accident. You're okay, but worried your car will never look the same. Your vehicle may be the second biggest investment you'll ever make. Give it the care it deserves at Body Shop 661.
Hi, this is Caesar from Body Shop 661. If you had an accident, you get to choose the auto body facility you want. Our full collision repair center works with all vehicles, foreign and domestic, and we handle all insurance companies.
Body Shop 661 off Ruther behind Home Depot.
Vargo Physical Therapy is a leading provider of rehabilitation treatment for sports and industrial injuries, as well as post-operative and age-related conditions. Vargo Physical Therapy patients have access to the best high-tech and most effective rehabilitation equipment. With locations in Canyon Country and Valencia, Vargo Physical Therapy has been serving the Santa Clarita Valley for over 15 years. Go to vargopt.com. Vargo Physical Therapy helps you get back in the game.
If you're in danger of losing your home to foreclosure, you need an expert. Hi, I'm Rich Sherman with Alta Realty. I've helped hundreds of Santa Clarita residents save their homes completely for free. I've got just over 20 years experience and a loan modification success rate of over 80%. I can negotiate better terms with your bank and I can save your home from foreclosure. And again, we do this completely for free. So if you're in any danger, please call me today at 661-714-1400. That number again is 661-714-1400. I'm Rich Sherman with Alta Realty, and I'll be happy to help you save your home for free.
Your hometown station.
KHTS AM 1220 and the new 98.1 FM.
Welcome back, my friends. You are right here at KHTS, your hometown station. You are listening to Sharon Brubaker and Sandi Atmore at the Grief Recovery Hour. Today we're discussing a very serious topic, and that is #MeToo, sexual harassment, child abuse. We're putting it all on the table right now and doing our part to make the change happen.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think, what I really love about what we're talking about today is, #MeToo has done so much to elevate, I think, the consciousness of so many people who weren't aware of how pervasive the problem is. I feel like where we come in as grief recovery specialists is the healing component.
Yes.
How do you grieve this kind of experience? Because it's one thing to have it out in the open and out in the light, which is good. That's a good step. But how do you walk through it? How do you get on the other side of it? Because there is another side. And I don't want people out there feeling like, well, if I admit that this thing happened, then I'm opening Pandora's box and I'm just going to be on the floor forever. I don't believe that's true. I know that hasn't been true for me or you.
No. And the other thing is, without dealing with it and out walking through it, it affects every aspect of our life.
Yep.
It affects the way we raise our children. It affects our jobs. It affects our dating life. It affects our marriage life. It affects our thoughts. It overtakes our thoughts, our dreams, our present moment. It can literally become like the blob and just start pulling from everywhere. There's no stopping it.
It's absolutely true. I mean, before I connected with what had happened to me, I'd been raped several times as a child, and I remember being 12 years old, and I was raped by an older cousin. He was about 20, and I remember thinking, well, I'm almost 13, so I guess it's okay that I had sex. It didn't dawn on me that what happened wasn't my fault.
Yes.
So there's all those losses to deal with. And like what you're saying, I went and piled on so many more crazy situations into my life and, alcohol and drugs and all this kind of stuff trying to avoid. And it wasn't until I started to not only face what happened to me, but walk through a process to resolve it, to not carry it anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm so free.
Yes.
My life, I'm joyful. When people hear my story, they go,
Yeah.
how are you? I had somebody who heard me share just a little bit the other day, and they said, you were a meth addict?
Yeah.
I said, yeah, for 3.5 years. You? Yes. Because they don't see it on me anymore. And I want to bring that to people. I want people to understand not only is it good for you to say what happened, it's good for you to heal. It's good for you to get on the other side. And you can. It's possible.
Absolutely. And it's like you go through a dark tunnel. You're standing at the dark tunnel and you're looking in, and it's with any type of loss, but it happens when you have this awareness that this is a grieving experience. And you're looking in that dark tunnel, and it looks ominous and it's scary, and you're like, there's no way I'm going through that. And I think you will admit with me and you will agree, it's tough.
Yes.
It's not easy.
Oh,
Walking
yes.
the walk is not easy. The difference is that you and I are there to guide.
Yes.
We are there to guide them. We've walked this path before you. We take their hand and we know the way through the tunnel. And on the other end of the tunnel is light and victory. And that's where we come out at. I want to talk about some myths real quick. You and I talked about one, but number one is that sexual assaults are committed by strangers.
Oh my goodness. It's such a dangerous myth. I just to speak to that, I saw a write-up that a psychologist did, and she wrote it because she said, these are the things that I'm seeing in my office with kids who have been molested. And the first thing that she talked about was, we teach our children this stranger danger, like what we were just talking about. She said, but it's not a stranger. It's typically a family member. It's a trusted friend. It's somebody the child knows. So that's a dangerous myth.
Absolutely. And think about as families nowadays, we're so afraid of strangers. We're not even letting our kids go out to play in the yard right now because of the kidnapping situation and all of that. So most of the kids are in the house, which is now causing another problem that we are playing too many video games. We're getting too heavy. But most times we know for a fact, I don't have the exact numbers, that it is somebody we know.
Yes.
I know for my situation, it was absolutely somebody that I knew. Number two is that we always report it. Is that true?
That is 100% not true.
Yes.
I'll speak for just a moment about what happens for children. So statistically for children, 96% of the time, it's like 96 to 98% of the time, if a child says that they have been molested, it's true. The only time that you will have a child that may say something happened when they didn't is if they're in a divorce situation and one of the parents is coaching them.
Yes.
Other than that, children don't make this kind of thing up, number one. Number two is the majority of the time, once a child says that this has happened, either they're not believed. I've worked with lots of cases with that.
Yes.
Or the next step is there are these policemen that come to speak to the child. The child gets afraid that they're going to be in trouble. And so then they say, oh, never mind, it didn't happen. Because they don't understand that the police are there to help them. It's scary for them. So those a lot of times don't get reported. And then a lot of times when people are sexually assaulted, they're embarrassed.
They're embarrassed. And I've actually worked with clients that they were told that it was their fault.
Yes.
They were told by their mother or their father that they brought it on.
Yes.
They caused it on themselves. They did something that caused this situation to happen, which is another layer of grief all to itself. Like we said, loss of trust, loss of safety. It goes back to that. One of the other myths is that if the assault were reported immediately, then you have it can be investigated and you have a better chance of charges being pressed. And that's not true.
No.
That is absolutely not true.
No, it's definitely not. I have worked with numerous cases, and I mean numerous cases, where the abuse happened years earlier and it's just now being reported. And it's being reported, charges are being pressed today. And I feel like it's actually, that's happening more now than ever because of Me Too.
Right.
But I think a lot of times when people do report, like you said, they are met with unbelief, or they're afraid to report.
Right.
And then they can feel like, oh, well, it did happen a long time ago, so I guess I shouldn't report it. But that's not true.
That is not true. Here's the other thing that, this makes me so mad, but I'm going to say it anyway, that if you didn't want it, you would have fought back. Sandi, I didn't fight back. I don't know about you.
No, I most of the people that I work with, and I work with a number of these cases, the majority of them didn't fight back.
Exactly.
The majority
Same
of
for
them
me.
didn't. They didn't. Again, we're talking having language, understanding boundaries, all those type of things, especially for children, even for adult women. I've known many adult women where when this happened, they froze.
Yes.
They had a fear reaction and they froze.
And it's like you are not wanting to say no, and that's where the whole date rape situation came out. I don't want to say no, but I don't know what to do here, or you're so young, you don't have the voice to say it.
Yes.
Going back to the same thing, and no, they didn't fight back. So hence they have this experience. And then number 5 is that a traumatic experience would cause your memories to be, the situation to be unmemorable. Like you
Oh,
wouldn't be able
goodness.
to remember. Isn't that the worst?
Can I just say, I love that we're talking about this one because there's so many losses that happen with this.
Right.
Now, so for me personally, a lot of the things that happened to me happened before I was 7 or before I was 8 years old, and it was way too traumatic for me to look at for a very long time, and I did block it out. There's some of the other things I did not.
Yeah.
When I was starting to connect with what had happened, it was kind of in the time when it was all about this false memory syndrome and all
Right.
these kind of things, which I think really damaged
The
people
timeline.
it really damaged people being able to come and being able to share what has happened. And I've done lots and lots of research on this topic because of my own experience as well as just being with so many people in this kind of situation. That is 100% not true. What happens is that when we go through something, and let's say we're really young, we go through something and the brain goes, I need to protect you from this. It's almost like an amnesia. However, when you get to an age where you are okay to handle it, where you're safe situations, like
Right.
I'm in safety, that's when the memories will start to come.
Yes.
And you know what? They're 100% true. I always say, who would make this up? If I'm going to have an imagination, why would it be about an assault? Wouldn't I have an imagination that would be about, I don't know, clouds
butterfly?
and
Butterflies
and
and
you know, like I
rainbows.
would not make these kinds of
No.
things up. And I have yet to find somebody who ever wanted this to be true, who ever made anything up. And as a matter of fact, most mental health professionals would also say that when you work with somebody, not only is that not true, but they get to a point where they can recall a lot of detail.
Well, I know for a fact, for myself, I can recall the outfit that I had on.
Yes.
I know what I had on. I know it was a favorite pair of shorts of mine, which led me to believe that it was summertime. I don't know the date.
Right.
I don't know the date. I know how old I was. I know exactly how old I was. I know where I was sitting. I know where he was sitting. There were actually other people in the room. I can recall the whole thing. It has never left my memory. And the details once it came back.
Right.
I was sitting down watching television and I was watching a show about sexual abuse to someone else. And it was then that all the memories came back to me and I was like, oh my gosh. It's so strange that we don't put a label on it so early on. You know what I mean? For our kids to understand, to talk about it, to be open with it, and let them understand that it's probably not going to be a stranger, but this is what's going to happen. The first line of defense is definitely going to be us as the parents,
Yes.
but it still happened.
Absolutely. One of the other things that psychologist wrote about, which is something I do share a lot of times with clients or with parents, is, first of all, give your children language.
Yeah.
Give them language and don't use pet names for body parts, but
Yes.
use the actual names. Empower them with language. Every person that I have worked with who had a parent who said, people are not allowed to do this.
Mm-hmm.
This is your body part. This is what's okay. This is what's not okay. It doesn't matter how much of an authority this person is. These are things that are not okay. Every person that I've worked with who had that did speak up. Now, that doesn't mean it was always handled well once
Exactly.
they did speak up. But if the first line is, yes, we empower our children with language. We set safety for them where we're having ongoing dialogue where they can come to us, where they can share those things. I've seen that happen lots of times. But, the idea that we want to protect our kids and not talk to them about that isn't helpful.
No, it is not helpful. And even going to that, I didn't do that for my children. We had pet names, but my daughter, for my granddaughter, uses the term vagina. She
Yes.
absolutely said, and it was uncomfortable for me because
Yes.
I was like,
Yes.
dude, how are you going to be out in the store yelling vagina? But she's like, Mom, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm setting it up. And you know what? More power to her.
Yep.
It's the right thing.
Yep.
It's uncomfortable at first.
It is.
Having those conversations
It
are
is.
uncomfortable, but you got to jump in. You have to have those conversations. It's just like with grief and a broken heart. We have to have those conversations. I want to quickly switch over to the
Yeah.
fact that a lot of people will hear us at the Grief Recovery Hour talking about hashtag Me Too and sexual harassment and child abuse, sexual abuse. They're like, what are these two ladies talking about? How do they go from grief to sexual abuse? Let's talk a little bit about that. We need to understand that there are 40 or more known losses that can cause a grieving experience in our heart. And I keep circling back to this because I want people to understand. We just use the word grief mostly with death because that's what everyone associates it with.
Yes.
But it's so much more than that. And that's the message. Do you think that is truly the message that we're getting out?
It's such a message because I know for me personally, because I did experience so much abuse. I mean, I've experienced way more abuse than I did death in terms of loss.
Yes.
And if I had never been empowered to grieve those experiences, I would not be where I am today.
Right.
The reason that my life feels joyful and present, and the reason I'm able to talk so freely like what you were talking about, is because somebody helped me understand that what happened to me was a loss, that those were loss events, that I had lost something. They helped me to understand that it was layered, that it was the parent that didn't protect me. It was the person who violated me. It was the people who didn't believe me. It was the people who didn't see the signs. It was even the way that I took it and internalized it and did destruction to myself. They helped me understand that all of those were losses. They helped me understand that, wow, I needed to grieve, that had that not happened, my trajectory of life would have looked very different.
So different.
And so if we don't talk about this and help people to understand that these are grieving experiences, they're going to miss out on life.
100%. The definition of grief is that grief is a normal and natural reaction to a loss of any kind.
Yes.
A grief happens in our heart. It's anything that was robbed from us, right? So our innocence can be robbed from us.
Totally.
It causes a grieving experience. It lands in our heart, and we will literally do whatever we can to make that pain go away.
Yes.
Even meth.
Yes.
Even alcohol.
Yes.
Even cutting. Even doing whatever we can to make that pain go away. And that's where you and I come in. And a lot of times we're having to have these conversations with our clients, and, you know, praise God, we got this tool that we can use, but a lot of times we're walking them through, yes, this is what happened, and here's how we get through it. And it's layers, and it's layers deep. Imagine a woman who's 55, 60 years old and has had years and years of this pain. And she comes to us, maybe for something very simple. My cat died. And we start there, and then we've got to go through all of these layers, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I so agree with you. I mean, what a gift.
Yeah.
Right? What a gift, because kind of, you know, like what you were saying, okay, so yes, there was meth, or there was alcohol, or all these things. For me, it was meth, among many other things. But just because I wasn't using meth anymore didn't mean I was living a joyful life. And I think a lot of times, because there's so much misinformation about grief and loss out there, people would stop at celebrating that I wasn't using meth anymore. And yes, it's a thing to celebrate. Trust me, I know that. But thank goodness, I got to go all the way into grieving why I was using in the first place.
Right. 100%. Yes. Thank gosh we have this tool that we can really bring to people and make them understand. I want to touch a little bit on this as well. This doesn't just happen to girls. It doesn't happen to young girls. It doesn't happen to women. It happens to boys as well. It definitely happens to young boys, young men, adult men. It absolutely happens to them, and we have to start talking about it. Me too. When I did the TEDx last week, there was a beautiful lady who shared that we have got to change this, and she actually started hashtag men too, which is actually kind of cool. But we need to understand and realize that this happens to men as well, and I think it's a little tougher for them to come out and say it. It's tougher for them to come out and say, this has happened to me. But we have to start having this conversation, just what you and I are talking about, even with our little boys, not just our little girls. We need to get it out so that they understand it, and that it becomes a topic that we're having at the dinner table. That's how comfortable this conversation needs to be. And that's where we're going to start to make the change.
I totally agree. And I think the other misconception that's out there is that it's only men who molest. In other words, it's men either molesting little girls or men molesting little boys. But I have talked with several men that were actually molested by women when they were young also. So this isn't just something that men do. Adult women do molest children also. And I think that's something that's unheard of. You just don't hear that talked about, but it happens much more than we realize.
Yeah. And we have to start having the conversations so that people become comfortable with it. That we become comfortable with that. And I'm going back to that same thing, but it's bringing up an experience for me. Can you imagine if and I think a lot of people are doing it now because they are changing, but when we raise our children in a world where they can just talk about this and know this is right, this is wrong, body parts, that whole thing, we're sitting at the dinner table, it just becomes a part of life. It's the same thing with a grieving experience.
Absolutely.
When you bring up a child in a home where they know how to grieve properly, share their emotions, and talk about it, it is such a different experience than when we're pushing things under the rug, and we're definitely not talking about it, for sure. Today I wanted the show to be just the precursor to the 1-year anniversary for the Las Vegas shooting.
Yes.
But with everything that's going on with this conversation today, I had to take a detour because we have a responsibility to get the word out.
Yes, we do.
To let people know that we're here and let people know that this is really happening and it's still happening today. I can't even tell you how many clients I talk to or they have at least one experience in their past. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to you a little bit more about what the process of grieving is, what it actually looks like when you sit down with Sandi or myself and absolutely work on all the losses that have gathered in your heart. Thank you, friends. We'll see you right back here after the break.
I've always been driven to serve our country and our community.
Congressman Steve Knight.
I served in the United States Army and spent 18 years as an officer with the Los Angeles Police Department. I ran for Congress because too often I saw people forgotten by Washington. The crisis at the VA exemplified a bureaucracy that was out of touch and hurting real people. As your congressman, I'm committed to making our government in Washington work better for you.
My name is David Brayton. I am an Air Force veteran. 10 years ago, my doctors told me that I had to have a double lung transplant. It was a massive uphill battle to get the VA to do what they said they were going to do in the first place. Finally, Steve Knight got involved, and if it wasn't for Steve Knight's assistance in this thing, I guarantee you I'd be dead. Steve Knight is a veteran, and he's LAPD on top of it. I'm voting for Steve Knight because he gets stuff done for us.
I'm Steve Knight, and I approve this message.
Men, are you feeling tired, stressed, or just don't have the energy you used to? Did you know this could be related to decreased testosterone levels? Luckily, there's a safe, effective solution. Weeder Prime helps support healthy testosterone levels with clinically tested key ingredients. Just 2 capsules of Weeder Prime each day can help change your mood, energy, focus, body fat, and lean muscle. Feel the way you felt 10, 20, even 30 years ago. Rediscover your Prime with Weeder Prime. To find a retailer near you, visit WeederPrime.com. That's WEIDER Prime.com.
Your hometown station. It's no secret that KHTS has the best midday talk show lineup around. If you've missed any of your favorites, no problem. KHTS has you covered. Podcasts for all the midday shows can be found right on our website, hometownstation.com. Whether you missed a show from 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years ago, and you want to catch up, we got you covered. They're all right there. Plus extra podcasts too. That's hometownstation.com. Hometownstation.com. 98.1 FM and AM 1220.
Santa Clarita's hometown station. Hometown station.
KHTS AM 1220 and the new 98.1 FM.
I want to say, hey, friends. You got me on the tail end of a fun conversation there. Hey, welcome back. KHTS, your hometown station. You are listening to the Grief Recovery Hour with Sharon Brubaker and Sandi Atmore. We have been discussing #MeToo. I'm labeling it that because I think it encompasses everything.
It does.
So we were talking about sexual harassment, child abuse, sexual abuse, all of those things kind of under one umbrella. But we wanted to come back and talk about what the process of grief recovery is. So I wanted to give them a little bit more information. We teach an 8-week educational program, and we do it in a couple of different ways, but it actually has a book. And I think the thing that is so amazing about our program is you're actually doing an inventory of your heart.
Yes.
So we actually walk the clients through looking at all of the losses in their life, not just either the death that brought them to us, the death of their pet, the death of their loved one, a sexual encounter, a sexual abuse encounter,
Right.
whatever that is, divorce, breakup of a romantic relationship. And then we are actually looking at that, and we're sharing our work with them as well, which is kind of cool. Want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Absolutely. I think what's really, really cool about what we do, about the grief recovery method, is the discovery part of it. You know, I think when I went into grief recovery, not really even knowing what I had lost, I didn't understand. Like you said, there was something that was actually what brought me there, where people were telling me to do it. It wasn't even that I really even understood why I needed it, because I didn't associate what happened to me with grief.
Yeah.
I just had some really great people in my life who were saying, you need to do this. This will help you. And I really went in thinking, I don't see how this is going to help me at all. And it was so amazing to walk through a step-by-step process that not only gave me language, but helped me even to identify what I had lost to begin with. What was, like you said, my heart story.
Yeah.
It was one thing to kind of know in my head. It was another thing to do an exercise that put it all out there.
Yeah.
Like, this is my heart story. And that helped me to connect with, oh, I've lost a lot.
Yeah.
And then to go from, first of all, understanding what are the misconceptions that I've had about grief, because I had lots. What are ways that I've coped instead of grief, right? Because if I am carrying unresolved grief, I got to do something with it. Most of the time I'm going to be in avoidance. What have I lost? And then what do I do with that?
Yeah.
What do I do? I think a lot of the things that I had done, which had been very helpful, were a lot more just about, like, we're going to identify what it is, we're going to analyze it, we're going to talk about it, which was great, but it was still with me.
Yes.
This actually was something that I could walk through that not only helped me to identify what that was, now what do I do to, like, resolve it so it's, like, not weighing my heart down anymore.
Exactly. Piggybacking on your story,
Yeah.
I remember not even wanting to do the work.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do the work because I sort of felt that if I got rid of this pain, that my love for Austin was going to go with it as well. I didn't want to do that. But I think the other thing that I learned that was really huge was that grief is not a mental illness. It's not happening in our head. It's literally happening in our heart. Our heart is broken. And that's why we do the inventory of our heart. That's why we do our heart work and look at the heart. That is so important. And this is not in our head to be analyzed, which there's a place and a time for all of that. But when we can zone in on that little area, then the thing that's most surprising, just like you, I come in because Austin has died, my nephew, then I realize, oh my gosh, look at this. When I unroll my heart work, there was a lot of things that were just sitting there, just heavy, just hanging out. I got to function. I'm a mom. I have kids. I'm making dinner. I'm dealing with my husband. I don't have time to deal with this. But that stuff was affecting every aspect of my life. So then once we look at that, we start to narrow in. And I actually let the clients kind of do that. Pick where we're going to go first.
Yeah.
I guide them and lead them, hey, we should do this because it goes in this order or this, that. And they really pick where they're going to go. And once they're done with that, we start completing the relationships in their heart to the pain, the loneliness, the isolation, and everything that they didn't know was even there. The loss of trust, the loss of safety, and sometimes it's many, many layers.
Yes.
And they literally are doing, this is what I love, the action steps. They're touching it, they're feeling it, they're actually writing it out. You and I are really just the guides. And that's what's so amazing. The most amazing thing for me ever is around week 4, where you can see their face start to change.
Absolutely.
You know, they might come in with a smile. They might tell a joke. There still may be tears. and maybe not, but you can literally see their whole life shifting and changing, and what we do for them, how rewarding it is, right? We're the lucky ones.
We really are. I
Yeah.
mean, it's such a great feeling to see transformation. It's such an amazing thing. And I think the other aspect of grief recovery that I find really incredible and was really great for me is that I also learned, yes, I'm heartbroken, but I'm not broken.
Yes.
You know, I think because so much had happened to me, I was under the assumption that I'm broken. There's no fixing me. I'm just broken.
Right.
And to walk through something that would say, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You don't need to be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
You need to grieve. You need to be listened to with dignity and respect. There was kind of an honoring that happened in the process for me that was very different
Yes.
than what I had believed.
Yeah.
And it gave me a way to kind of walk through these experiences with a different lens.
Yes.
It was different to look at, well, what did I lose? Oh, I'm carrying mountains of pain, but
Yeah.
of course I would be carrying mountains of pain. Now I know what to do with those. I'm not crazy. There was something really amazing in that for me.
And the mountains of pain weighs about the same as a 10-pound bag of potatoes.
Yes.
And it's like you're carrying that around day in and day out. That's no joke. This is the truth. And you're literally carrying this imaginary bag, 10-pound bag of potatoes everywhere you go.
Yes.
And when you finish grief recovery, your life is lighter. Things are just lighter. You're laughing more. Fond memories are returning. You're able to look at photos that you haven't been able to look at. You can have conversations with family members and literally tell them where you've been and what you've gone with. Now, you still have to go to the grocery store. You still have to put gas in your car.
Absolutely.
You still have your life. You still fight with your loved ones, but it's just lighter. That's the best way that I can describe it. It is, and even to this day, so many years later, 12 years later, that's how it is for me. Just absolutely lighter.
Absolutely.
Sandi, quickly tell us where everyone can find you.
Griefunchained.com.
Awesome. I want to thank you so much. I love our time together.
Me too.
Friends, we will be back here. I want to just remind you we're having a 2-part series on the Las Vegas shooting starting October 1st. We'll see you back here on the radio.